The Nigerian Central Bank, at the end of its fifth meeting for 2021, held on Friday, announced its decision to retain its monetary policy rate at 11.5%. According to the Committee on the Policy, the cash reserve ratio is left at 27.5% and liquidity ratio at 30%.
Similarly, the Apex Bank has insisted it will not reverse its decision to ban the sales of foreign exchange to bureaus of change after the move apparently pushed the naira into an unprecedented fall.
It also accused a private website which collates the naira exchange rates at the black market, Aboki FX, of carrying out what it described as illegal activity that undermines the economy. Now, Aboki FX has, however, decided to temporarily suspend rate updates on all of its platforms. The owners of the website said the suspension will remain until it gets better clarity of the situation. Well, here to unmuddy those waters is Dr. Muda Yusuf, who is the immediate past Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
All right, Dr. Yusuf, you're welcome to the studio this morning.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you. Good to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I mean, let's get right into it. It's about monetary policy rate, but it looks to me like what happened at the meeting, particularly from the body language of the CBN governor, was all about Aboki FX, and it sounded so agitated. I mean, it's not a bad idea to be agitated about what is happening to the naira. It's tumbling, it's in a free fall, and everybody's worried. But then it seems to be all about Aboki FX. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts as to what the CBN is up to?
Well, I think the response of the central bank governor was disproportionate. Because, quite frankly, the Aboki FX issue, for me, is a non-issue. Because Aboki FX is just like a market intelligence platform where you gather information and you post the information on your website. I mean, there is nothing unusual about it. Even newspapers, broadcast, print, and all of that. I mean, in fact, it's not the only website. I mean, there are other platforms where you find people posting different trades and all of that. So I don't know how that has now become such a big issue that we warrant the kind of response that we saw from the central bank governor. I think it's a non-issue for me.
Oh, you know that they are accusing the owner of Aboki FX website, one Mr. Olusegun Adedotun Oniwinde, I believe, yes, of running that scheme. They're saying, it's tantamount to economic sabotage by using his website to set that exchange rate. Although they have denied the claims in a press release yesterday, saying they only aggregate the rates and that they are not even forex traders. Well, some analysts have said that the CBN's allegations and accusations are unfounded, like you have just said. But the point is, they say that the CBN governor is looking for a scapegoat. Do you believe that the CBN is looking for a scapegoat?
Well, I wouldn't like to characterize it as looking for a scapegoat. What I will say is that the CBN is arrogating to Aboki FX a power that it doesn't have. Aboki FX doesn't have the power to influence exchange rate in any way. I mean, it's a question of, earning credibility. There are so many sites on which you can find information about the exchange rate. But if people find the Aboki FX platform as more credible for information's sake, that is why it has gained the kind of credibility that it has gained. And in any case, how can just merely posting information on a website now become an economic sabotage or now influence policy? You see, we need to relate to fundamentals. What we are seeing and what the central bank has been trying to deal with are symptoms of some fundamental problems. And unless you deal with fundamentals, these problems will not go away. First, it was the BDC Well, there was allegation there are all sorts of issues around them. They were removed from the sales of FX. At the time, it was microfinance banks. At the time, it was fintech. Now we are talking about Aboki FX. Now we talk about people who are, going with multiple tickets and all of that. There are all sorts of issues. And these issues arise because of the fundamental issue of inappropriate pricing of the foreign exchange. The exchange rate issue, the fixing of price, and the premium that has been created between the official window and the parallel market window. Even though the CBN governor is saying that he doesn't recognize all these other windows or other rates. If they are that unimportant, then why are we after Aboki FX? If you don't recognize parallel market, then how did Aboki FX now become so important? So my point is that we need to relate to fundamentals. For as long as we continue to fix the exchange rate the way it is, especially at the NAFEX window, because if you say you have a market window, a market should be a market. You don't go to a market and fix a rate. What has happened now is that we have fixed a rate which the demand and supply fundamentals cannot support. The CBN said anybody who has legitimate demand should go to the NAFEX official window. Where is the forex there? That is the issue. Talk to all the major players in this economy that have attempted to secure or get forex from the NAFEX window. What percentage of their demand is being met? The best you can have is maybe about 20%, sometimes even less. So if you are just getting 20% of your demand, then what do? Some of these things are the things that are putting pressure on rates outside the official window. So I think the issue is it's a pricing issue, it's a subsidy management issue. Because when you are pricing a product far below what is the market rate, you are creating a subsidy regime. And we know what it is in this environment to manage a subsidy regime. We have experienced it with the essential commodities in the days of essential commodities, where people are being flogged when they were trying to get some of these things. We have experienced it with fertilizer, when we had heavy subsidy on fertilizer. It was so bad at that time that military people were deployed to accompany the trucks that were carrying fertilizers because the trucks were disappearing. And even with that, with the military people accompanying the trucks were still disappearing. We had similar things with. Now we have the same problem with exchange rates. So I think we should relate with fundamentals, because if we don't deal with the cause of a problem or the causes of a problem, and we keep fighting the symptoms, we are not going to get anywhere. So my take is that the CBN should allow for a market-driven framework so that we have a market that functions. It will serve the demand management easier. It will also encourage supply. Because what has happened now is that because the CBN is fixing the rate, it is also blocking or discouraging supply from coming into the economy. And once you have a supply crisis, there is no way you not have the kind of crisis you have. Now we have other sources of supply, apart from the oil and gas or crude oil. We have possible sources from the FDI, that foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investors, the export proceeds, the proceeds from the embassies, proceeds from oil companies, proceeds from some of the MDAs that generate forex, proceeds from the diaspora. These are other sources of foreign exchange. What are we doing to encourage them to bring in the foreign exchange so that we can strengthen the supply side of the foreign exchange market? If anything, the fact that we have fixed a rate of 412 or 413 and insist that all these players should come into this economy at that rate is also discouraging them from bringing the forex. And that is what is creating all sorts of windows, people doing business under the table. A lot of transactions are taking place offshore, and a lot of distortions have been created just because we have fixed a rate that is not sustainable. And now look at the differential now between the official window and the parallel market. We are talking of a premium of over 30%. The best practice in economic management is just a premium of about 5%. So if somebody is smart enough to cross $1 million from the official window to the parallel market window, you'll be making over 100 million naira just by doing that. Well, what business can be more lucrative than that? So this is the kind of regime that has been created that is creating all these problems. For as long as you continue to manage it in that way, continue to allocate, because we are in a regime of rationing, all sorts of problems will continue to arise. It also creates even transparency problems. We now see brokers and all sorts of people claiming to be able to assist people to get the FX and so on. So we should just address the fundamentals. And the fundamentals is to allow a market-driven framework to function at the NAFEX window. That is my take on this.
Well, all right. We'll have to go on a very quick break now. And when we come back, the morning show will continue. So do stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Still talking about all things Nigeria's economy, and Nigeria's central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, man of the hour, says the bank is going after illegal operators in the foreign exchange market to stop them from frustrating the bank's policy measures towards a stable naira. Speaking at the bank's Monetary Policy Committee meeting, Emefiele insists that the decision to stop the sale of foreign exchange to bureau de change operators will be maintained. The Apex Bank also took a decision to keep its monetary policy rate at 11.5% to allow stability of its policy objectives. Now, cash reserves ratio, that was retained also at 27.5%, and its liquidity ratio at 30%. Let's take a listen.
Reducing this.
Committee applauded the bank for improving foreign exchange supply in the economy to meet legitimate business and consumer demand. Members thus urged the bank to take further steps to restrict the activities of unauthorized and illegal foreign exchange dealers in the foreign exchange market, stating that all foreign exchange transactions must be necessarily conducted at the investors and headquarters window to ensure transparency and stability. The committee thus called on the bank to intensify surveillance over foreign exchange sales and utilization by commercial banks and customers to ensure that operators adhere to stipulated guidelines set by the CBN. The bank thus maintains its resolve to continue to restructure the foreign exchange rate market and will pursue all recent policies targeted at sanitizing the market to improve transparency and proper functioning and eliminate illegal FX dealers in the country.
We are still, of course, joined by the immediate former Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you for staying with us. You did hear what the central bank governor had to say there. It is clear what his objectives are, to preserve Nigeria's rationing level of foreign exchange, and he's having to defend that on all fronts. That being said, his decisions and the way he goes about them has tickled a few people, to say it lightly. Whether or not we can talk about the Aboki FX decision and how that's been received, it does seem as though more people seem to support the idea of the central bank stopping its selling of foreign exchange to BDCs. Do you agree with that, or do you think that that too was controversial and hasn't really served the intended purpose?
Well, I think if you have a system that functions well, the CBN has no business selling forex to BDCs, because on their own they should be able to access, to also source for foreign exchange. If you don't have a system that is too possibly even over-regulated, they should be able to source their own foreign exchange, because some of these things are also a kind of contradiction in terms. Exchange rate is a price. And if you want to influence a price, you influence it either from the supply side, that is ensuring that you boost supply, or on the demand side, ensuring that you manage the demand. Those are the two critical factors that normally should drive exchange rate. But if all we are doing is just struggling to deal with demand and not addressing the supply side of it, I'm talking about creating incentives for people who want to bring in forex into the economy to bring it in, then it's a contradiction. Because the whole objective is to stabilize the foreign exchange market. And if you want to stabilize the foreign exchange market, you don't put a policy that will not be discouraging people from bringing their supply into the market. That for me, I think, is a big issue. Whether you sell to BDCs or not, that is even a lesser issue. What is important is to allow a system that works. We cannot continue to manage a system by way of rationing. Because what the CBN is doing is trying to suppress the market. And it's a very difficult thing to do. You never can win when you are confronting the market. Because it's like water. Water will always find its level. It's like swimming against the tide. So we should allow the market be. We had this experience in 2016. We were managing this kind of crisis until the NAFEX window was created. That is what led to the creation of the R&E window. At that time. And the moment it was created, it was a fairly market-driven window. And that brought a lot of relief, a lot of sanity, a lot of stability, a lot of certainty to the foreign exchange market at that time, because the rates were market-driven. But now we still have the NAFEX window, but with a fixed exchange rate. If you are fixing a rate so that is no longer a market. And once you have a rationing problem, you always have issues. You have issues of transparency, you have issues of speculation, you have people of all sorts of influence coming into the space. Even the BDC, the original BDC operators, have practically been crowded out with people who have real influence because of the very, very big incentive, the robust benefits of round tripping from the official window to the other window. So that, for me, is a big issue. We should allow the market to function. The BDCs, if you want to give them, fine. If you don't want to, but if the system works well, they should be able to source their own foreign exchange. I've outlined other sources from which forex can come in. I mean, if you are in UK, if you have a business there and you want, assuming you have a business in UK and you want to do a business here, and you want to bring in pound sterling here, and you know what the official rate is, you know what the market rate is, and the CBN is telling you that you should bring it at the official rate, which has a premium of almost 150 naira to even more than that per unit of the currency. How will that encourage you to bring in the foreign exchange? I have interactions with exporters. One of their biggest problems, because normally in this situation, we should be encouraging exports. It's bad enough that they have all sorts of issues at the ports and all of that. On top of that, when they get their export proceeds, the CBN insists that they have to sell the export proceeds to the banks at 412. And the exporters are saying, how can we sell at 412 when the market rate is over 500? As I'm speaking to you, that is the policy that is still in place. And because of that, some of the exporters will not want to declare their export proceeds. There is this NXP form which they are supposed to fill. Some of them will not fill it and all of that. These are instances where policy creates problem of management. And where there is a legitimacy with a policy, implementation will always be a problem. The intentions may be good, but policies must be sustainable. Policies must also have legitimacy. If there is a legitimacy problem, as we have in this FX issue, there will be a problem of enforcement, of compliance, and the regulatory authority will be so distracted trying to chase different people flouting the things, mobilizing the EFCC, mobilizing the police and all of that. And that is not likely to achieve much if the fundamental issues of pricing is not addressed. I mean, take the example of the fuel subsidy. That is another subsidy problem. With all that the government has been doing to stop the smuggling of petrol from Nigeria to neighboring countries, have you been able to succeed in doing it? Now I understand that the consumption, domestic consumption of PMS has gone up to about 90 million liters. Under normal conditions, it should not be more than 50 or around 40. But because there's a huge disparity between the fuel price, which is about 165 here, and other neighboring countries, we are talking about 350, 400. The incentive to smuggle is so high, especially with a porous border. Even if we deploy the entire military into it, you are not likely to solve the problem because it's a pricing problem. So the same thing is what is playing out in the foreign exchange market. So our appeal, or my appeal personally, is that we should give a much bigger room for the market to function. We can monitor the market. Because in economics, there's what we call market failure. If there are instances of market failure, we can identify them and deal with them. But we cannot totally suppress the market and say the market should not function and begin to drive economic policy through micromanagement or through sentiments and all of that and expect to achieve any results. Of course, you are not likely to achieve any results. And I also suggest that the CBN should also engage stakeholders. Nobody knows it all. We have the bankers, we have even the BDCs, you have all sorts of, you have economists and all of that. Let us have an engagement on this matter, on the way forward. It's in the interest of all the economic players for these things to be dealt with in a sustainable way so that we can attract investment. Right now, with what is happening, it is difficult to attract investment into the economy. Because how do you bring capital into an economy, first, where the rates are so unstable, second, where even some of those who have invested here are having challenges, even taking their money out. All of these things are not good for the attraction of investment. And yet we need investment to get out of all the economic challenges that we have. We need investment to be able to create jobs. So this policy, I think, needs to be reviewed, especially from the point of view of fixing the rates at the R and in window, allow the rate to be market-driven, then we can now manage it from there. And one advantage of it is that, first, if you have a market-driven rate, initially, of course, the rate will go above the 412 that we now have, assuming it goes to around 500 or 480. First, it will reduce the pressure of demand. All these parasites that are in the foreign exchange market, because of the premium they are getting, many of them will disappear. Because you have narrowed the incentives, you have removed the incentive for round tripping. So it has the advantage of reducing demand. It has the advantage of even increasing government revenue. We are talking about reducing deficit. Why must you sell your FX at 412 when you can sell it at 480? If you get that, don't you know the impact that will have on fiscal deficit in terms of government revenue? Then it has a profound effect on supply. All the people that want to bring in investors that want to bring in their forex into the economy, if they know that now they can bring in their forex at 500, at 480 or something, as against 412, we are likely to see a lot more of them bringing in their foreign exchange. And that will help the supply side of foreign exchange. So on one hand, you are moderating the demand, you are removing the pressure. On the other hand, you are also increasing the supply. That is what we want to achieve. And that is what the CBN has been trying to achieve. So a market solution will help to achieve that, rather than this fixing. If you continue with this fixing arrangement, then we continue to chase all these issues of compliance and all of that. And at the end of the day, we may not have much to show for it.
Well understood, Dr. Yusuf. I mean, you were apt in analyzing the exasperation, if not outright frustration, that CBN seems to be exhibiting. However, one other major concern that many Nigerians are talking about is the issue, is the fear over what might happen to domiciliary accounts. You made an important reference to 2016 when a sort of knee-jerk approach was used in, talking about what you can keep, what you couldn't keep, etc. It looks like people think that the CBN is trying to fly a kite. Yes, last week they denied that anything that domiciliary accounts, either in dollar or pounds or etc., will be converted forcibly, to naira. But it looks like everything points toward desperation. If that happens, or if something close to that happens, how do you think that will further affect, the fiscal policy and the economy in general?
Well, I don't want to contemplate that's happening. And the good thing is that the CBN was very clear in its denunciation of that report. That there is no such thing, that is being proposed by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So it's better not to contemplate it, because the effect will be very damaging to the economy, and I don't even know how to describe it. So it's better not have, because if it happens, it will lead to almost a complete collapse of the confidence of investors in this economy. That is what it means. And these things have terrible, tremendous signaling effects on the economy. So I don't think we should get to the point where the domiciliary accounts will now be forcibly, converted to naira. I think that will be most unfair. I think that just as I said, it is better to deal with the fundamental issues of policy, and also we also have some structural issues which is affecting competitiveness and productivity in the economy, which could help to reduce imports and also encourage exports. Those structural issues are also things that we can deal with. But the idea of converting domiciliary accounts first into naira, I don't think is something that will happen. And I'm happy that the CBN has flatly denied that is contemplating any such thing.
Well, Mr. Muda Yusuf, you've just talked about market policy. As we know, Nigeria does not operate a free market policy. We have that managed float system. According to the CBN Act 2, only the CBN can determine the value of the naira. So if that is so, why was it possible for, let's say the Aboki FX to operate for that long? They even claim that they had been, investigating them for over 2 years. And why is it that there are not such parallel markets in other countries? Also, what measures can the CBN now adopt to prevent the Nigerian people from depending on, say, an Aboki FX or BDCs if they are trying to say, if they're trying to accuse them of those type of inflation?
You see, the claim that the CBN is the only one that can determine the exchange rates, I think is something that we should also interrogate. It is the market that determines the rate. If you go out there today, talk to any investor, talk to any business owner, the rate that they will tell you that is operational in this economy today is all this 550, 520 and all of that. Nobody is talking about 412. Because for one thing, you cannot get it. If you get it, maybe you get a very small fraction of what you need. So the operating rate is this parallel market rate, or call it whatever name. So that is it. So it is not even correct to say that it's the CBN that determines. You can determine the rate almost academically. Yes, it's on the website. The rate is 412. But if as a contractor you have a project that you want to execute, you'll be paid in naira, and you have some import content, and you are making a quotation to a company, will you go and put conversion rate of 412? Certainly not. You put what is the real rate. And this is why I get worried when the CBN says it doesn't recognize the parallel market rate. I mean, that is like living in denial. The prices today and all the inflationary problems that we are witnessing in the economy today, the galloping inflation, a lot of it is linked to what is happening in the exchange rate. Not in the official window, but in the parallel market window. So we have to reckon with it. If we don't reckon with it, then we are doing it at a great peril to the economy. So we have to reckon with it. So the issue of whether it will exist or not, in other climes it exists. But the problem is that the rate here between the parallel and the official is too wide. That is where the problem is coming from. The best practice is to have maximum 5%, 10% premium, because they are different markets. When you go to a bank and when you go to a BDC, they are slightly different.
But what will it take to achieve that, Doctor?
It's just to allow the market to function, that is it.
But people are afraid that the Naira could hit 700, 1,000.
Is it not already getting to that now? It's getting worse. And just as I said, if you allow it to float,
yes,
you have the advantage of increased supply.
Okay.
Because the supply is not coming because you have fixed the rate. And a lot of transactions that should normally come legitimately through official channels are not coming because you have fixed the rate. And a lot of transactions are taking place now offshore. You'll be amazed at the amount of transactions where people get dollar there and they pay Naira into some account here. These are the distortions that have been created, which I am hoping that the CBN will realize and make the necessary adjustment. Since it's a simple policy issue.
Understood. Dr. Yusuf, you've made such profound statements. You said earlier that you can't win against the market. It's almost as tantamount to swimming against the tide. Yeah. And it sounds as though throughout this discussion, what you're imploring the central bank to do is to go back to basics. The central bank governor, I don't think any of us can doubt his abilities, his qualifications, his capacity. Yeah. So why do you think it is so difficult for him to go back to basics?
Well, I think he's in a better position, or the central bank is in a better position to do that. But my own position is that these are tested economic theories and principles. Economics is a science, even though it's a social science. It's a science because you can predict outcomes. That is what science is all about. It may not be an exact science like you have in physics or chemistry, but to a large extent, you can predict outcomes if you understand a particular context in which an economic activity is taking place. It's a social science because you have a lot of human component in it. That's why it's a social science. So some of these outcomes are predictable. And that is why I'm saying that you just look at all the examples that we have had about subsidy management in this economy. All of them have been creating a lot of problems for us. Even some of these intervention funds. Because the rates are very low, some of people who get it, a lot of issues, they encounter all sorts of issues. Some of them even bordering on transparency. You know? So the decision of the CBN to continue to adopt this unorthodox method, which they call it, is, I think, the reason they have adopted that is left to them. But what is important to all of us as citizens and as players in this economy is that we want an environment that is more predictable, that is less volatile, that can make it easy for people to plan, and that we remove all these malpractices and all of that around the market. That is what we believe, and we believe that a market-driven system will bring some sanity into this situation. This idea of rationing, administrative allocation, is not sustainable. It can only deepen distortions, it will deepen corruption, it will deepen abuse within the foreign exchange market. That is my own personal position. And this position is supported to a large extent by even economic literature, by economic theories and all of that. I'm not saying that these things should be absolute, but that, I think, is the way to go.
Well, from what I'm understanding, it just appears like there's not enough cash in the system. And as you know, the CBN has put in so many measures to prevent foreign exchange from being scarce, like limiting forex cash deposits, reducing foreign spending limit, basic travel allowance, and banning BDCs. And now, you know, they say only banks are authorized to sell forex. Yet, many Nigerians are complaining that the banks aren't selling. What more needs to be done to make foreign exchange more available? I know you have given some instances, but do you even think those measures helped or are helping?
You see, the point is that the central bank has been concentrating on the demand side of the market. Banning products, getting a list, running after people with multiple passports, and all of that. These are demand side things. And this issue has both demand and supply side. I've told you all the other channels through which supply can come in. Encourage them to come. Tell them, come with your dollar, bargain with your bank. Whatever rate you agree, willing buyer, willing seller. What is important is for those liquidity to come into the system. That is what will solve the problem. If you allow that to happen, that will solve the problem. Then we have some government agencies that also generate foreign exchange. Like NIMASA, like NPA, and some of them, they generate something that is substantial. We have the oil companies, they bring in foreign exchange to make some of their domestic operations. We have the embassies, they also bring in foreign exchange. But let's give them the willing buyer, willing seller window or opportunity. That bring it in, whatever the rate you agree with but let there be documentation so that you have access to know how much is coming in from which channel and all of that. If you do that, you'll be bringing the supply solution into the equation. What we have seen all along is demand. And you are managing demand, we have issues with supply, and you are rationing and all of that. There's no way you can win with that kind of model. That is it. So that for me, I think is the solution, to increasing the supply. Of course, we have issues, structural issues around cost of production, infrastructure issues, and all of that. Of course, the fiscal policy areas, I think, can be dealing with that. But this policy area, I think, because the situation shouldn't be as bad as it is if the policy component of the problem has been properly taken care of. So I believe the CBN should go back to the drawing board around this effect. And this effect is important because it is central to international trade, import and export. If the rate is not appropriate, it will create problem on both sides. It is critical to investment. We have seen how the capital importation have been dropping. If you don't get it right with the foreign exchange market, investment will not come. It's critical to even foreign portfolio flows. We need forex from that window. If you don't get it right with the FX management, those inflows will not come. It's critical to exports. Exporters are complaining that they are not getting the right value for their export proceeds. These are our own people that are here. So what does it cost to say, okay, get your export proceeds, engage with your bank, whatever you agree with, you convert your money or you take your dollar and all of that. So these are very simple solutions, and that is what I think should happen.
Well, Dr. Muda Yusuf, thank you very much for joining us on the morning show. That was, of course, the former Director General at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much for such a compelling conversation.